With his passing, many are again asking the question, why did Pope Benedict resign? When Pope Benedict resigned nearly 10 years ago, in February of 2013, he cited declining health as the main reason, indicating a decline of both mind and body. Pope Benedict said that due to an advanced age, his strengths were no longer suitable to an adequate exercise of leading the church. His decision to resign voluntarily, he said at the time, was a decision of great importance for the life of the church. A few days later, he announced that he would spend the rest of his days in a life of prayer, hidden to the world and hidden from the world for good reason. In May 2005, Jesuit Father Thomas J. Rees, then editor of the National Catholic Reporter, was forced to resign by the Vatican Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which was headed at that time by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later to become Pope Benedict XXVI. The National Catholic Reporter, though clearly left-leaning in some of those editorial stances, was widely viewed as a moderate publication that gave vent to a broad spectrum of views. For what it's worth, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith does its level best to make people forget its historical name, the Inquisition. So it is safe to say that Cardinal Ratzinger was the Grand Inquisitor of the Roman Catholic Church. While forcing the resignation of Father Rees could be seen as merely a matter that had little effect outside of church circles, other decisions taken by Cardinal Ratzinger had much more far-reaching effects and may have been what actually led to his resignation before they blew up in his face and took church to a never-before-seen low. When Benedict resigned, R. Reno, editor of the more conservative journal First Things, said, "It's a bad precedent. We don't want the Pope to become like a CEO who needs to resign if he becomes ineffective. I think it's wrong to think that. Through our human agency, we can solve the Church's problems or avoid any institutional suffering." As a hardliner, Reno believes in papal infallibility. What about a bishop or cardinal? What they do before they become pope? Is that also covered by the infallibility doctrine? In January 2016, a German lawyer charged with investigating the abuse of minors at the famous Catholic boys' choir in Bavaria revealed that 231 children had been victimized over a period of decades. The archbishop in Bavaria at the time the molestations and mistreatments took place was one Joseph Ratzinger. The investigation, 2 years in the making, goes to the heart of the culture of cover-up and underscores the tacit policy of protecting church leaders ahead of children and other vulnerable people. Both were pervasive during the years when Benedict, then known as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, was Archbishop of Munich and Friesland. He held the position from 1977 to 1982 and had oversight over the clerics in the archdiocese. And according to the report, he failed to act against some very abusive priests. In a letter dated in 2001, Cardinal Dario Castellón-Hoyos backed French Bishop Pierre Pécan's decision not to denounce a priest who was later sentenced to 18 years in jail for repeatedly raping a boy and sexual assault of 10 others. "I congratulate you for not denouncing the priest to the civil administration," Castellón-Hoyos said. "You have acted well, and I am pleased to have a colleague in the episcopate who, in the eyes of history and of all other bishops in the world, preferred prison to denouncing his son and priest." Under fire for its secretive handling of abuse cases, the Vatican has insisted the fact that other published documents did not explicitly instruct bishops to inform police of abuse, that they also did not keep them from providing the information. The then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict, instructed Catholic bishops around the world on May 18, 2001 to report all cases of clerical sexual abuse of minors to the congregation, the top Vatican doctrinal office that he himself headed. The Epistola de Delictus Gravioribus on Most Grave Crimes, signed in May 18, 2001 by Cardinal Ratzinger as prefect of the congregation. The letter's objective is to give practical execution of the norms promulgated with the apostolic letter Sacramentorum Sanctitas Tutelio, published on April 30, 2001 and signed by Pope John Paul II. The claim that the Vatican rules that were expanded upon Ratzinger in 2001 did not preclude bishops or cardinals from informing civil authorities about charges of pedophilia against priests it required the complaints first to be forwarded to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The Epistula de Delictis Gravibus never clarified if the local bishop could report the offenses to the local police without facing the possibility of being excommunicated for speaking of matters before the congregation, a rule put in place by the Crimens Solicitations, approved by Blessed Pope John the 23rd and published by the Holy Office, which later became the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The 1962 instructions called for the excommunication of whoever reveals details about the canonical penal procedure. So to say that there was nothing to keep a bishop from reporting to law enforcement the civil crime of child molestation is ludicrous. It can safely be assumed that since the canonical courts must be informed first of the complaint, and that discussing any proceeding before the canonical courts would earn said bishop an immediate excommunication, is it any wonder that the situation, disgusting as it is, went on for so long? While much was made of Pope Benedict defrocking 400 pedophile priests in the 2 years prior to his resignation, on the morning of 28 February 2013, Benedict met with the full College of Cardinals and in the early afternoon flew by helicopter to the papal summer residence of Castel Gandolfo. He stayed there until refurbishment was completed on his retirement home, the Mater Excelsia Monastery in the Vatican Gardens near St. Peter's, which was formerly the home of 12 nuns, where he moved on May 2nd, 2013. Castel Gandolfo is afforded extraterritorial status as one of the properties of the Holy See, meaning that it has the same inviolability of an embassy. Local police cannot enter unless invited in. That fact was most certainly of the utmost importance to Joseph Ratzinger, as in 2010, a U.S. federal judge issued 3 two-page court documents asking for the Vatican's cooperation in serving a suit on the Catholic Church's 3 highest-ranking members, Joseph Ratzinger, Tarcisio Bertone, and Angelo Sodano. The court has sent letters rogatory, which is a request from a foreign court to obtain evidence from a witness. In this case, it was asking for depositions to be obtained from the Pope, the Vatican Secretary of State, and the previous Vatican Secretary of State. Shortly after the letter rogatory arrived in the hands of the Vatican's labyrinthine bureaucracy, the great defrocking began. Even with the removal of predatory priests from parishes and ministries, the fact that there was a request to depose a sitting pope in a civil case being asked to explain why he never defrocked a priest with multiple abuse allegations against him, even when the Archbishop of Milwaukee repeatedly begged the Vatican to do so. With no way to change the optics of the situation facing the Church, Pope Benedict was left with no good options that would restore faith in the Church so long as he was still Pope. So he resigned for the good of the Church. On March 29, 2019, 1 month after a historic Vatican sex abuse summit was held, Pope Francis issued new Vatican City law requiring Vatican City officials, including those in the Roman Curia and foreign nuncios affiliated with the Vatican government, to report sex abuse. Failure to do so could result in a fine of up to 5,000 euros, about $5,600, or in the case of the Vatican Gendarmerie, up to 6 months in prison. The statutes of limitation were also increased from 4 years to 20 years, and any Vatican employee found guilty would be dismissed on a mandatory basis. On May 9, 2019, a new law was issued to male and female church workers, not just in the Vatican, but throughout the world, to disclose any report of sex abuse. Finally, the victims have a chance of getting true closure. Thank you, Pope Francis.